So Tupac's cousin just did an interview with Art of Dialogue, and he's not holding back at all. My man came through and called out Fat Joe for telling another wild cap story about Tupac. And listen, if you know Fat Joe, this ain't nothing new. This man's got more wild stories than a Netflix crime series. No, real talk, Fat Joe's been telling all these action story movies for years. But the one that had everybody like, nah bruh, you bugging, was when he claimed an Ecuadorian kid tried to unalive him 8 times in 2 days when he was a teenager. 8 times in 2 days? Man, stop it. The internet wasn't rocking with that at all. But now, this is different. Tupac's own cousin stepping up and calling out Fat Joe directly? That's a whole nother level. When family speaks on stuff like this, it hit different. So let's break this down and see why Fat Joe's story isn't adding up again.
The story about an Ecuadorian kid who tried to air me out 8 times in 2 days. This really happened, Shady. This guy was like...
If you know me in real life, you already know this is exactly why I ain't got no friends right now. And that's why I'm locked into this content creation grind, because I'm that friend. I don't care who you talking to, where we're at, or what's going on. If I hear a piece of cap, bruh, I can't even help myself. I make that face, you know, that one. And honestly, that's the same face Fat Joe's homie was making when Joe started telling that wild story. Bro's sitting there like, Joe, come on, man. You could see it all over his face. Wait, how you gonna tell one of these Burger King Whoppers on air and not prep me first? Like, Joe, we were doing good. Why you gotta go do all that? But nah, Joe can't help himself. And me? I'd be sitting there just like his homie, staring, processing, and mentally wondering where Joe gonna take us next.
And for no reason. He shot up my whole rental. We was in there. I hear the block going, oh my God, they killed Joey and Tony. Then we get up, it's bullets. This man here, he had me shook. I couldn't get a drop on him. I went to his block, seen him on the corner. We 3 deep. The rustiest guns you ever see. We about to jump out and get him. This guy's in the middle of the street.
Listen, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat this. I know for a fact Fat Joe is capping. And it's not even just me saying it. It's his own homie's face that says it all. You know that look when you're in mid-story and your man hits you with that look like, bruh, seriously? Yeah, that look. That's never a good sign. And this ain't the first time either. Joe's been telling wild stories for years, and they've all been proven to be, well, let's just say embellished, to be nice. One of the biggest ones, when he claimed he was the one that connected Bone Thugs and Harmony to Notorious B.i.g. for their song Notorious Thugs. But what happened? Bone Thugs came out and shut that down quick. Straight up said it didn't happen like that. And even more recently, Fat Joe's been out here recently telling stories that folks who are really in the know or really in the industry had to come back and refute and correct. So yeah, Fat Joe, he's always been adding a little season onto most of his stories for a lot of years now.
I told a story on a documentary, I believe Angie Martinez is the host for with Biggie. I went in there and I talked about how I connected Bone Thugs and Harmony with Biggie Smalls to go Bone and Biggie, Bone. And I see it go viral and everybody's like, it's Cap. Joe's capping again. Steve Lobel's on here, who's been Bone Thugs manager for 30 years. He's on it. Bro, Bone Thugs and Harmony was the biggest group at the time. Biggest, selling 30 million. They were tight with Tupac, so they didn't want to do the song out of respect for Tupac. But I convinced them to get in the studio with Big and do Bone and Biggie, and they did it, and I'm sure they're happy that I convinced them to do that because it's a legendary song that everybody loves. Now, when I say stories like this, people think I'm capping. I'm lying. Oh, Cap, this is Cap. I can't make this shit up. Do you want the best stories in hip-hop or no?
I'd prefer the actual story to be Ink T, not Frank. Bone Thugs and Harmony kept it street, like real street. If you know, you know. But they just said, yeah, Biggie helped us out with something, and after that, we were rocking with him. Like I said, if you know, you know. And Bone Thugs, they never mentioned Joe. Not once. All right, so now people are calling out Fat Joe with this Tupac story he's been running for years. But guess what? Tupac's own cousin just stepped in and shut down all the rumors with an Art of Dialogue interview. The story Fat Joe pushing? He's claiming that he had Tupac scared and uncomfortable while being locked up on Rikers Island. All because Pac said something on the air that rubbed Joe the wrong way. Bruh, Fat Joe acting like he was a boss out here like that? He was really pressing people from prison? From the streets? I'll let that sink in. Especially from back then.
Ash dummy. Like, what do you think about? Let's go. Yeah, I don't care. You
But you
know.
also was telling the truth. That's your life. That's who you were. It's not like you was up here lying like a lot of rappers.
But what happened to me one time that you got to be careful because your words are powerful, and I'm really not trying to. But it's a perfect example. East Coast, West Coast. I'm really tight with Biggie Smalls. I do know Tupac Shakur, right? I know that's weird to the young kids listening, but Biggie's my man, right? Family since day one. And Tupac, I know him, we cool. But I get up here and they do it to me. Yo, what do you think about the East Coast, West Coast? Yo, I don't know, man, but if somebody talk to me, it's on and popping out here. Like, we can get it popping, this, whatever they want, this. Now, Tupac's in jail doing time up in New York. The Spanish cats hear that, and they start making them feel real uncomfortable in jail now. Right? Mutabel could tell you the story.
Now let's unpack this for a second. I get it. Back then, Fat Joe did kind of run New York. But bro acting like he was Michael Corleone at that time, and I'm sorry, no you weren't. And now we got this wild story Joe's pushing. He's acting like he breathed one word into somebody's ear and it put a green light on Tupac's head from all the Puerto Ricans in jail. And if you thought that was the wild part, it gets crazier. Fat Joe said that Tupac was under so much pressure that he ended up cracking and having to call Fat Joe for safety. He really said that Tupac called him and begged him to call off the dogs. Like I said, I already called Fat Joe Cap. But do you understand who Tupac was back then? Pac wasn't just another rapper. He was a movement. If Pac had a reason, he probably could have had that whole prison cracking anytime he wanted to. But here's the thing, and I'm not here to sully Pac's name. If we are keeping it a buck, there have been whispers that Pac wasn't all the way comfortable behind those walls. But to be honest, if you're comfortable in jail, something's wrong. I know prison's no cakewalk, but Tupac? Scared? They kind of go in the same sentence. And now, Tupac's own cousin had to step in and clear the air. It's wild how these stories just keep growing with time. But that's Fat Joe for you. Maybe he got that name because he's always been adding extra seasoning.
Spanish cats hear that, and they start making them feel real uncomfortable in jail now. Right? Mutabel could tell you the story, right? So Tupac reaches out to me and says, yo, Joe, put him on the phone. I think it was Greg Nice from Nice and Smooth. Put him on the phone. He's like, yo, I got Tupac. So, bless you. He's like, I got Tupac. I'm like, yo, what's up? And he's like, yo, Joe, I fuck with you. You know, my beef with them is this and this and that. He was like, you know, they're making it real uncomfortable for me in here. The Spanish dudes, it's like, you got on the radio, send a kite, you don't rock with me. So I had to send a real kite to the Spanish dudes in there and say, yo, I don't really have a problem with him. Like, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They wind up being cool with him in there. And, you know, and so he always said to his crew and everybody, like, yo, Fat Joe, you know, he held it down. But you got to be, your words are very powerful.
Yeah.
And they could cause real situations out there without you even knowing.
That's right.
So you got to be careful.
Now let's keep it real. I told you earlier I did hear the rumors. Pac had a hard time inside, but let's not act brand new. Any rapper, no matter how big, is gonna face challenges inside any jail, especially in California. That's just how it goes. But scared? Begging Fat Joe for protection? Man, I gotta say stop the cap. Pac wasn't built like that. Whatever struggles that man was facing behind those walls, he would never call nobody and beg for his life. And that's where Joe's story falls apart. You gotta know when to leave the fiction out of the facts.
Mind you, I was going to visit Pac every month. If Pac was having problems with anybody in prison, I would have been the first to know about it. Not only would I have been the first to know about it, Watani would, you got to know, the people who are in prisons, who run the prisons, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans who do. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man. They people, yo. You get where I'm coming from, Del Rey? Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with people who were strong.
Absolutely.
Tupac didn't want our people protecting him. He refused when he first got into Clinton. There were people already with care packages for him. Like strong people, like legendary It's like, I'm talking about legend. They all in the newspapers, dude.
So let's really stop the nonsense right here. Between Fat Joe's story and Tupac's own cousin telling what really went down, bruh, I'm rolling with Pac's family every time. Nobody runs a prison like that. Anybody who's ever been locked up knows that. And you're telling me Tupac, one of the most iconic revolutionary rappers at that moment in history, was just about to get violated by the Puerto Ricans in prison, and the blacks were gonna do nothing about it? Like I said, stop the cap. Fat Joe was acting like he was the warden of that prison. He had the walkie-talkie making sure Pac came home safe. Here's the reality. Pac had the yard on smash. And if anything went down, trust, it wasn't calls from Fat Joe that kept Pac safe. Fat Joe really thought he was over here cooking and adding seasoning. But sorry, this story was dead on arrival.
Legendary. That is telling Pac, if you got problems, let me know. I'm gonna make sure that the CEOs know, blah, 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 and this and that. And Pac telling him, nah, that's all right. I don't need none of you guys to help me with nothing. I'm good. I'm gonna ride this on my own. And then the officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything in population. So that there's no chance of anybody trying to take advantage of this guy who is being watched by some of the strongest men in prison. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is going to put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people, to tell his people, you know, does that make sense? Especially
Probably ever could.
yeah, especially in Clinton. Like I was in Clinton. I used to work on Clinton Farm. So I know how that, and like I said, he's right about the Puerto Rican. They got strength in those jails and they buck wild, you know, but when it applies to them putting pressure on Tupac, I don't see that. I see that being far-fetched. I don't see that being actually accurate. Now, he may have embellished a little bit in telling that story, but I do not see Tupac being pressured enough to where he has to call Fat Joe to clear some stuff for him. Tupac could have called, look, dude, I don't want to go and get into names and like that, but he could have called any one of the people that I'm thinking about that could have put a stop to whatever that was going on with him, if it was going on.
To me, being a hip-hop head at such a young age, being tapped into Double XL, The Source, and even Street Murmurings was just epic at the time. Back when you really had to have your ears to the streets. This was before the hood DVDs and even the blogs. We even knew about 50 Cent and Bang'em Smurfs. I also knew about Fat Joe telling wild stories since the 90s. I remember being a kid and reading a story about how Fat Joe was saying that he welched on a bet from a plug, and he was sitting in a restaurant eating, and the plug spotted him. Him and his goons snatched him up, took him back into the back of the kitchen and put his hand in a meat grinder. Somehow he made out of that situation unscathed. Let's just be real. Joe been out here saying whatever for content for decades, and I don't think it's gonna stop now. But if you made it this far, click the left side of the screen right here to see what Sauce Walker had to say in his defense about setting up his artist Say So P. But don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share to be aware, put me in that algorithm because I need to be there, man. Because I know there's 10 other streamers out there doing it like me, but
Fuck that other little 10.
I'm maxed out.